Hello, brave and beautiful girls, and welcome back to Girls Who Rise, a storytelling podcast made just for you. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever had a moment where something didn't go the way you expected, where you weren't in control and you needed help? Maybe it felt a little scary, or maybe everything just felt uncertain, like you didn't know what was going to happen next. But then someone showed up for you, and somehow something good came out of it. We are stepping back into Anne's world again, a world where imagination can turn ordinary moments into something extraordinary, a world where people are still learning about each other and themselves, and a world where growing up means trying again, seeing things in new ways, and slowly learning to feel at home with who you are. Let's continue reading and see what happens that helps Anne begin to feel grateful. Here's a quick story note. This story was written a long time ago, so I've abridged it. That means I've made it easier to listen to by shortening some parts. But I've kept the heart of the story just the way the author wrote it. It's still Anne's story, told in a clearer, simpler way. And before we begin, let's take a quiet moment together. If you'd like, place your hand gently over your heart. Take a slow breath in and breathe out. Again, a slow breath in and out. Remember, you matter. Your imagination matters. Your voice matters. You are exactly where you are meant to be. This is a place for big feelings, brave hearts, and stories that help us grow. Now, get comfortable, take another gentle breath, and let's begin. Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. Chapter 17, A New Interest in Life. Summer came, and for the first time since Anne had arrived at Green Gables, she wasn't wondering what would happen to her next. She felt settled. Green Gables was home. And because of that, her thoughts began to turn toward something new. She started thinking about who she wanted to become. Anne still spent long days with Diana. They walked to the lake of shining waters and along the white way of delight, where the trees arched overhead and a soft breeze moved through the leaves. Sometimes they wandered through Idlewild, the little forest tucked amongst the trees. But now, alongside all of that, something else had begun to matter. Anne started to notice things differently. How Marilla measured carefully without wasting anything. How planning ahead made things easier. How slowing down helped her understand. She asked for help when she needed it. She watched closely when someone showed her how to do something. And when she read, she no longer rushed past the parts she didn't understand. She paused, read them again, and gave herself time. And she found that she liked that feeling when things started making sense. One warm afternoon, Anne was reading beneath the trees when she came across something that didn't quite make sense. She read it, then closed the book. Instead of guessing, she went to find Marilla. Out in the yard, Marilla was hanging clothes, her movements steady and practiced. The sheets lifted gently in the sunlight while smaller garments lined up neatly beside them. Marilla, Anne asked, "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." Anne opened the book. "I don't really understand this part. I know the words, but I don't understand what it's really saying." Marilla read it quietly, then explained it in a simple, clear way. "Sometimes you have to slow down," she said, "and sometimes it helps to ask. You don't have to figure everything out by yourself." Anne nodded. "You're right," she said. She didn't say anything more, but she carried that thought with her as she walked away. Nearby, Matthew was working along the fence line, mending a loose section. He hadn't meant to listen, but he had heard enough. Anne didn't move the way she had when she first arrived at Green Gables, careful and uncertain, as though she might be sent away at any moment. She moved differently now, like she was used to being there. He had been right when he told Marilla that Anne ought to stay. Anne brought something into their lives that hadn't been there before. Not just conversation, but warmth, something that filled the house, even when it was quiet. He glanced over as Anne passed by, then returned to his work, a sense of contentment settling in. One afternoon, Anne found Marilla at the kitchen table, looking over her weekly list, each item written in careful, even handwriting. The pencil moved steadily across the paper as she checked things off one by one. Anne stood nearby for a moment, watching. "Marilla," she said, "you always seem to know what to do and when to do it." Marilla finished the line she was writing and then looked up. "That comes from doing it over and over again," she said. "Making a list helps me remember." Anne rested her hands lightly on the table. "I don't think I remember things that way," she said slowly. "I remember different things, like how the breeze moves through the trees, or how a room feels when everyone else is talking and I'm just listening." Marilla was still for a moment. "I suppose I don't pay much attention to those things," she said. Anne tilted her head slightly. "I think they matter too," she said gently. "They're just different kinds of things to remember." Marilla glanced toward the window. "If you hadn't said that, I wouldn't have thought about it," she said. "I think there's room for both," Anne replied. Marilla nodded once. "Yes," she said, "I believe there is." When summer began to fade and the mornings turned cooler, school started again. Anne walked in feeling ready and focused, determined to do her best. She noticed everything as she entered: the sound of the students talking in the hallway, some rushing to their classrooms, while others lingered, looking for their rooms. Younger children were settling in, and older students moved with more certainty. When she stepped into her own classroom, she paused for a moment. The desks were lined neatly, each one marked with a student's name. The chalkboard was already filled with the day's lessons. Light came in through the windows in a way that made everything feel fresh and new. She found her seat. Throughout the day, Anne listened carefully, and when she didn't understand something, she slowed down or asked for help instead of guessing. As she worked, she noticed Gilbert. He wasn't the same as he had been the year before. No teasing, no trying to get attention. Now he kept his eyes on his work, listening closely and staying focused. Anne still remembered how he had hurt her feelings when she was new to the school, and she wasn't ready to forget that. But she noticed the difference, and it made her think, how did he answer so quickly? How did he seem so sure? It made her want to try harder. Soon a quiet pattern formed. When a question was asked, they were both ready. Sometimes Gilbert answered first, sometimes Anne did. And when she got it right, it felt good, like she had really understood it. Anne still kept her promise not to speak to Gilbert. But when he answered quickly, she felt that small spark of determination rise again. She wanted to do just as well. Chapter 18. Gilbert to the Rescue. Anne and Diana had been walking together one afternoon after school, enjoying the warmth of the sunshine and the beauty of the day. When they reached a bridge, they paused and looked down at the river below. The water moved slowly, reflecting the bright blue sky and the dark green trees along its edges. "I've always thought," Anne said, "that this would be the perfect place for something adventurous to happen." Diana smiled. "Adventurous?" "Yes," Anne said, her eyes bright. "Something exciting, like a story where someone is drifting along and no one knows what will happen next." Diana looked back at the water. "Well," she said, "we do have a boat." Anne's face lit up. "Oh, Diana, we must do it." They brought a small rowboat to the edge of the river. Anne stepped carefully into it as it shifted beneath her feet. Diana steadied it while she climbed in. "I shall lie here," Anne said, "and the river can carry me along while you watch from the bridge." Diana tried to look serious. "You do make everything sound more exciting than it really is." Anne smiled. "I'd just like to see what it could be." Diana pushed the boat gently away and hurried up to the bridge. For a few moments, everything went exactly as Anne had imagined. The boat drifted softly with the current. The sky stretched above her. The water moved in a steady rhythm. Then the boat shifted. At first, it was slight, but it carried her faster than she expected. Anne sat up quickly, her heart racing. The current pulled the boat forward beneath the bridge, and then it tipped. Anne fell into the water, cold and sudden. For a moment, everything blurred: the splash, the shock, the cold. Then she reached out and caught hold of one of the wooden posts beneath the bridge. "Diana!" she cried. "Oh no, Anne!" Diana cried. "I'm all right," Anne called back, though her voice shook. "But I can't get back up." The water pulled at her clothes, and her arms were already growing tired. Above her, Diana looked helpless. "What shall I do?" she cried. Anne tried not to panic, but she didn't know how long she could hold on. Then footsteps came quickly onto the bridge. Someone looked over the bridge. Gilbert Blythe. He moved at once, running down toward the water where another small boat was tied. "Hold on," he called. He untied it and brought it beneath the bridge. "Can you get in?" Anne tried, but she was too tired. "Here," he said, reaching out his hand. Anne caught his arm and, with his help, climbed into the boat. She sat there, shaking, cold, breathing hard, her hands trembling. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "You're safe now," Gilbert said. Anne nodded. "Yes," she said softly, and then she looked at him. "Thank you." Gilbert looked a little surprised. "That's all right," he said. By the time they reached land, Diana was waiting, still shaken. "Oh, Anne, I was so frightened." "So was I," Anne said. "It didn't go quite the way I planned." Diana let out a breath. "Nope," she said. "It certainly didn't." Anne glanced back toward Gilbert as he secured the boat. For a moment, she hesitated. Then she gave him a small nod. He nodded back. As Anne and Diana walked home, the afternoon felt different. It was still beautiful. The sky was still bright blue, but everything felt more real. "Gilbert was very kind," Anne said after a while. Diana nodded. "Yes, he was." Anne didn't say anything more, but she kept thinking about it. The next day at school, things felt slightly different. Anne still listened carefully, she still worked hard, but now, when she looked at Gilbert, things didn't feel quite the same. She remembered how frightened she'd been and how quickly he had come to help. More than once, she found herself noticing him differently, not with the same sharp hurt as before, but with something else. More than once, she found herself noticing him differently, not with the same sharp hurt as before, but with less anger than she used to feel. She was surprised that someone she had judged so firmly could still do something so kind, and she knew she needed time to think about it. Later, when she had a moment to herself, Anne thought again about how quickly things could change. An afternoon that had begun as playful imagination had turned real scary in an instant. And yet something good had come from it. Someone had helped her. Someone she hadn't thought of as kind. Then Anne had a simple thought. People could surprise you. And you couldn't always decide who someone was from one moment alone. She wasn't ready to settle everything in her heart all at once. But she knew this much. The moments that you never plan are often the ones you remember the longest. Chapter 19. Matthew's Gift. One day after Sunday school, Anne was walking home just behind a group of girls. They were talking and laughing easily. Anne noticed their dresses, how they moved as they walked, how everything looked put together. She wasn't thinking anything unkind about herself, but she wished, just a little, that she had something like that too. They were talking and laughing, their voices light and easy as they walked along the road. As Anne watched them, something caught her attention right away. Inside, sitting quietly, the dresses had looked pretty, but out here in the bright light, they seemed different somehow. Anne found herself admiring them. Not all of the girls wore them, but most of them did, in different colors and patterns. She noticed this, and though she wasn't thinking anything unkind about herself, she did admire how they looked. Before she came to Green Gables, Anne hadn't always had nice clothes to wear, and it made her wish, just a little, that she had something like that too. She wondered what it might feel like to wear a dress like that, and how she might feel about herself when she did. Later, when she reached Green Gables, she went to look for Matthew. He was outside that afternoon, quietly looking over the things the way he often did after church. Anne came up the path and stood near him quietly, as if she wanted to say something but wasn't quite sure how. He noticed. "Anne," he said gently, "you seem a little quieter than usual." She hesitated for just a moment. "It's nothing," she said. "It sure doesn't seem like nothing," Matthew replied gently. "Well," she said as she glanced down the path, as if she could still see the girls walking ahead of her, "I noticed the girls after Sunday school. They looked so nice, with ribbons in their hair, and their dresses were so pretty. I liked the way it all looked," she added. Matthew didn't answer right away. He had been young a long time ago, and he wasn't a girl, so he didn't always understand the kinds of things girls noticed or cared about. But he did understand what it felt like to notice something and quietly wish you had it too. But to him, it seemed like a small thing. He looked at her, his expression gentle. "It's not such a big thing," he said. Anne gave a small nod. "No," she said. She waited a moment longer, hoping he might say something more, but he didn't. "It's not important," she said, a little too quickly. "Well," said Matthew, "if you think so." Matthew looked at Anne as she left to go inside. He could hear the disappointment in her voice. He had seen enough to understand that this mattered to her, even though she tried to make it seem small. So he decided he would do something about it. The next morning, Matthew went into town, even though he never liked going into town if he could avoid it, and he never went into a store unless it was absolutely necessary. The man at the store turned and asked, "Can I help you?" "I was looking for something." "For a girl," he said. "What kind of something?" the man at the store asked. Matthew hesitated again, glancing around the store as if the answer might be sitting somewhere on the shelf. "A dress," he said at last. "Just something she would like." The man at the store nodded, looked around on some shelves, and then reached for a dress, unfolding it carefully. It was simple but thoughtfully made, with soft fabric and careful stitching. Matthew looked at it closely. He wasn't sure what made one dress better than another, but he tried to imagine Anne wearing it. He took a look at the dress and said, "Yes, I think she would like that." The man smiled a little. "It's a good choice," he said, and he wrapped it up. Matthew then returned to Green Gables, a package tucked carefully under his arm. On his way home, he had hoped he had chosen something she would truly like. Inside, Anne was in the kitchen, standing near the table with a small cloth in her hands. Matthew stepped into the doorway and paused. "Anne," he said quietly. She looked up at once, her face brightening. "Hello, Matthew," she said cheerfully. "I was wondering when you would be back home. I was going to help you with the animals and look at the kittens in the barn." Matthew gave a small nod. For a moment, he didn't say anything. "I brought you back something from town," he said, a little unsure. "For me?" Anne asked. Matthew nodded and held the package out to her. She took it carefully, almost as if she were afraid to move too quickly. She slowly began to open it. The paper came loose under Anne's careful hands. She folded it back piece by piece as if she didn't want to rush, and then she saw it. For a moment, she didn't say anything at all. Then she lifted the dress gently, holding it up just enough to see it clearly. "Oh, Matthew," she said softly, "it's for me?" "Yes," replied Matthew quietly. "I've never had anything like this before," she said. In fact, she had never owned anything, ever. I shouldn't take it," she added softly. "It's too much." Matthew looked at her, a little surprised. "It's for you." Anne looked back at the dress again. "Then I'll take very good care of it," she said quietly. "Thank you, Matthew." Matthew gave a small nod, still a little unsure of what to say. But he could see it in her face. He had gotten it right. Anne was still holding the dress when Marilla came in. She stopped when she saw it. "What is that?" Marilla asked. Anne turned toward her. "Matthew bought it for me," she said. Marilla looked at Matthew. "You bought her a dress?" "Yes," he said quietly. Marilla stepped closer, looking at the dress more carefully. "It's a very fine dress." "I don't see why it was necessary," she added. Anne stood still. She didn't say anything. Matthew started to speak, then stopped. "I thought she might like it," he said at last. Marilla looked at him for a long moment, and then looked at Anne. Her expression didn't change right away. Then she let out a small breath. "Well," she said, "I suppose it can't be returned now." Marilla's eyes softened. "You'll take very good care of it. Hang it up properly and don't go wearing it for every day. It's not meant for that." Anne nodded quickly. "I will." Marilla gave a small nod. "Very well, then," she said. Anne looked down at the dress again, her fingers smoothing the fabric gently. Then she carefully folded it just the way she had seen Marilla do with important things. In her room, she laid it gently across the bed. For the first time, she didn't feel so different. For a moment, she simply stood there, feeling grateful. And she felt, in a quiet way, that she belonged. This is where we stop today, Bravehearts. But what did you think about everything that happened in these chapters? Let's take a minute and look back at what we just experienced. And as we talk about it, notice how you're feeling right now. Not just what you're thinking, but what you feel inside too. But before we do that, let's pause for a moment, take a breath, and sit together quietly. Let's take a slow breath in and a gentle breath out. In these chapters, we start to see Anne change as she becomes more comfortable being part of things. She is just not watching anymore. She is a part of what's happening around her. She starts to notice things that she didn't pay attention to before. How people move through their day, how they join conversations without stopping to wonder if they should, how they laugh easily like they've done it 100 times before. And something else begins to happen. Sometimes Anne's doing those things too, without stopping, without overthinking. And that feels new. We also see some change in how she feels about Gilbert. Before, she had already decided how she felt about him. She had held on to that. But after what happened at the river, she can't ignore what he did. He came right away. He helped her. He didn't tease or make her feel embarrassed. She's not ready to suddenly be friends, but she's not able to think about him in the same way either. Then there's Matthew. He doesn't make big speeches. He doesn't like to draw attention to what he's doing, but he notices things. And when he hears about something that matters to Anne, he does something about it. And for Anne, that doesn't feel small. It feels warm, feels like someone is paying attention to her, and it makes her feel noticed, like she matters. Marilla is still her steady, practical self. She doesn't lead with feelings, she leads with doing. She focuses on what needs to be done, what makes sense, and what keeps things running the way it should. She doesn't always say what she feels, she is still paying attention in her own way. When you look at all of this together, you start to see something really important. You see not just what has happened, but how each person feels about what happens and what they choose to do with those feelings. Anne feels things quickly and deeply. She reacts and she thinks and she feels everything as it comes. Matthew shows how he feels through what he does. He doesn't say much, but his actions say it clearly. Marilla pays attention in her own way. She doesn't always say things out loud, but she notices what matters and she gives Anne the space to grow. And when you look at it like that, you start to see that people don't all feel or show things the same way. So let's name the big feelings we saw today, because when feelings have names, they aren't quite so scary. The big feelings in these chapters are belonging, uncertainty, and gratitude. Belonging is the feeling of being part of something, not watching from the outside, but being included in what's happening. Anne starts to feel that in small moments, when she knows where to go, when she's part of a conversation, when things don't feel quite so new anymore. Have you ever had a moment like that when you realize, hey, I'm a part of this? That's belonging. Uncertainty is when something feels different, but you don't quite know what that means yet. This is where Anne is with Gilbert. She knows he helped her. She knows that it mattered, but she's still figuring out what to do with those feelings. Have you ever been a part of something that changed and you're not sure how you feel about it yet? That's uncertainty. Gratitude is when you notice something good and it makes you feel thankful. Anne feels that with Matthew. He didn't make a big moment out of what he did. He noticed that she wanted a dress, and he went into town and chose one just for her. When she opened it, she felt how much it meant, and she could feel how much care went into it. That's gratitude. When has someone done something for you that meant more than you expected? How did that make you feel? And here's something to remember: big changes don't usually happen all at once. They happen in small moments like these, moments when you notice something, moments when you feel something new, moments when you start to understand things a little differently. And when those moments happen, you don't have to rush through them. You can slow down, take a breath, and let yourself feel it. Because when you do, your thoughts get clearer. And underneath all of that, you'll find there is a steady voice, the one that helps you understand what something means to you. And when you start listening to that voice, you begin to trust yourself. I had such a good time reading with you today. But before we go, I want you to always remember you are not too much. You belong here. You are someone who is meant to be here. You matter. As we keep reading Anne's stories, we'll keep noticing those big feelings together. Until next time, brave ones, be gentle with your heart. Keep noticing your thoughts and feelings. And remember, being hopeful, curious, or even a little unsure is a big part of being brave. If you are enjoying these stories, make sure to follow, like, and share Girls Who Rise so you don't miss a single episode. Because soon I am going to have something special just for you, something that you can keep with you, something that reminds you of the brave heart you carry inside. I can't wait to share that with you, and I can't wait to keep reading with you. So until next time, brave hearts, see you soon.